This is Single Status.
Welcome back, everyone. Welcome to Single Status. We have my friend Amanda with us, who I'm so thankful for because, well, first of all, you have been like a number one supporter of me and the show since I started. And I just so much appreciate that because, you know, you have those friends that say like they're supporting you, and I'm not expecting that people listen to my show, friends or family, but you honestly really support and you listen to the episodes, and I've just been so thankful for you. But Amanda is a mother, a wife, a businesswoman, a friend, a daughter. Like, you are just an amazing person, and I have been wanting to have Amanda on the show, so I'm so happy that you're finally here.
Thanks for having me.
And we're like work besties, so that's how we met, at work, and we're like the rom-com girls at work. Oh, we did. We did.
We were
Tell the story.
So we met at work, we thought, right? So we became very fast coworker friends, work besties, and then ended up finding out we had a mutual really good friend, mutual best friend, and It turns out we were at her bachelorette party together for like a whole weekend, and didn't recognize each other when we started on the same team at work. So that was...
Yeah, that is so hilarious because we actually found pictures of us with each other, and I didn't remember.
No clue.
That's so hilarious. It's so funny how you like cross paths with people.
Yeah. And then come back later to it and have no idea because that was months later.
Yeah.
That happened.
It's so funny. You're right. We did know each other before work, but you know those people at work or like in life that you meet and then you have an instant connection?
Yeah. That's
how we were. I remember our first conversation.
Yeah, I think, what did I come over to your desk and I'm like, hi.
I was the new girl on the team. Yeah, and it's been, friendship ever since. But yeah, so I'm so thankful that you're here because Amanda has such a encouraging story, and it just is so clear of like God's goodness and how he restores all like broken things and whatever we go through, like we can trust God. There's a higher purpose through all of it. So
absolutely.
I really want to just go through Amanda's story, and I just think it would be so encouraging for anyone listening or going through like hard times or hard seasons. So let's just start with your story. You went through a divorce. Yep. And you were in your early 30s when you went through your divorce?
Early 20s.
Early 20s.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. So, just start there and bring us through that.
So, married my high school boyfriend. We had been together for a long time. I don't know, 6-7 years, something like that. We were married for almost 2 years. And at some point, things just broke down. He decided that he didn't want to be part of that relationship anymore. And from there, we just kind of had to figure out what was next. I was devastated. I didn't see it coming. I was very much blindsided. It threw me for a loop, but I was married and we had found our religion. And I wouldn't even say religion. I would say found my relationship with God while we were married. So in my mindset, it was like, well, we're going to work this out. We go to a counselor, we go to our pastor, we figure out what our next steps are, right? He wasn't into it. The weekend that he decided to leave the house, I called the only person that I knew off the top of my head that I could get a hold of very quickly. It was an old neighbor of ours, actually. So when I was young, my mom, for some reason, I remember it was my birthday. She couldn't get out of bed. She couldn't move. Our neighbors came down. They laid hands on her. They prayed for her. And I mean, as a young girl, I got to have my birthday that day, right? Mom was okay. She was fine after that. We don't know what happened or why that happened, but we did know that God got her out of bed and got her moving, and she was good to go. So I called this gentleman, and he prayed with me. And I just remember being in my living room and just getting down on my knees and just letting him pray. I wasn't somebody who prayed out loud. I wasn't somebody who affirmed prayer out loud or anything like that, but I let him say what he needed to say, and I really just felt the whole weight of the world lift off my shoulders. It was something like I've never felt before, and I knew that I would be fine. I didn't feel good. I didn't feel like this is okay, what was happening, but I knew in the deepest part of my body that I was going to be just fine, regardless of what happened.
Wow. Yeah, so, because it's, when you commit to someone, whether you are married to them or maybe you're in a serious relationship and you see your life with this person and you are so set on this vision that you have and you're so intertwined, and then to have all of that come crashing down and someone to tell you that they don't want to continue after you went through a whole wedding and everything, like, that is just, it's so hard. And I don't think people understand how hard that is unless you actually go through it.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen people go through it. I haven't been super close to it. Both of our parents were still together, but I felt like that was like rock bottom. There was a point where I was super hopeful. I knew what I was going to do. I knew I was going to figure out if I did something, I would try to fix it. I started looking internally to figure out, like, should I fix something? What is it? What would I be comfortable changing about myself? And I did everything that I could. When it came to the point where I realized I don't really have much of a choice in this anymore, like, he filed, and at that point I had been counseling with my pastor and his wife a lot. I probably emailed her every single day for a couple of months and then tapered off to like every other day, but it's still pretty often.
Yeah.
But it got to the point where they knew he was going to serve me and they prepared me for that, and we prayed about it, and I was content with that happening. And that was a turning point for me. So I decided at that point, like, okay, well, I can't do anything else about this, but I know God's watching out for me. I know that I am going to be okay. So what do I want to do for myself? So I looked inward, and after getting through all of the parts where you're like, I did everything wrong, your brain starts to tell you that you need to fix a litany of things, or at least mine did. And in that, I found that I was just trying to find a way to, like, pity myself so I could feel bad for myself. And I went through those motions, and then it got to a point where it was like, okay, well, what is it that I really need right now? So I looked at my diet. I looked at how much I was exercising. I looked at my relationship with God to see where that was at, and work. I found myself owning a home now by myself, and now I have to pay bills, and I had kind of relinquished all of that to my ex, so I had to relearn. When we talked about this before, we were talking about starting over. I was literally starting over. I did not know. I knew how to pay bills, but I didn't have to do it. So now I had to figure out budget and what I was going to do with every area of my life. So I just started making small changes and adapting them, and just didn't stop, just focused on myself as long as I could. Signed up for a marathon. I'm not a runner.
Wow.
Ran a marathon.
Wow. And so how old were you when the divorce was, like, finalized?
I believe I was 24.
24, okay.
Once we were done.
And it's so interesting how you said, like, you started looking at, okay, like, what are the things that I need to change, or what are the things I need to do? Because I think especially women, we so often think it's something that we did. And there are cases of, there's cases where, okay, that's something maybe we need to change or we did. But a lot of times it's the other person and we can't really do anything about it. And And so often then we blame ourselves for something that it's actually someone just going through something, or like in this case, your ex, there was something going on with him.
For sure. And I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
I don't know that I would always share a reason depending on what the reason is, but I truly have no idea what made him decide this wasn't for me anymore. Hindsight, I'm super grateful that he did, but I don't know. And I don't know that I ever will. So I had to come to terms with the fact that I may not have that reason to have closure. So I did go through this, well, I need to change everything about myself, but very quickly flipped that to, what do I actually want to change? What aspects of myself do I really want to improve? And am I doing that for me, or am I doing that because I feel bad about something that happened that may not be my fault? So it really took some serious introspection.
Yeah.
And again, I was counseling with Lori's, my pastor's wife. So I was counseling with her and just asking her what my next steps would be, what I should pray for when I'm praying. And those things really made a big difference.
Yeah, and I just wanted to make sure we hit on that, because I think, again, so often, like if you're going through a breakup or divorce or something, so often we like beat ourselves up, like I'm doing this wrong, I should have did this better, I should have did that, and it's like sometimes it's really out of our hands.
Yeah.
And I like that you took the time to understand, like, okay, am I trying to change for him or for a reason that's not a thing?
Yeah.
Or, you know, what do I actually want in life? Like, what do I deserve? And so when you were asking your counselor, whoever was helping you through this time, and you asked her like what to pray for, what was the response?
So we prayed a lot for my ex, a lot. And I think that helped me from being bitter towards the situation and toward him. So I prayed for him that whatever was holding him down or back, he would come out of. For myself, I prayed that I would find the things about myself that I wanted to improve, that I would find a deeper relationship with God, and that despite it being difficult and having very tear-filled nights and, you know, my parents not even knowing what to do or how to help me, because it's just, when you're so sad, you don't know how to tell people what you need from them. Yeah. You can tell them what you don't need from them, and it's easy to tell them, like, I don't like what you're doing, or I don't need this right now. But being able to have a clear enough mind to tell people what I need from them and how they can help me and how I can help myself were really pivotal in those prayers, and just figuring out what's going to help me move forward, what's going to help me get through tonight.
Wow. And you're so right, because I remember, and I haven't gone through a divorce, but going through a breakup that I never thought I would ever go through. It is like the deepest pain, one of the deepest pains I've ever experienced. And I just remember that time in my life was a pivotal moment in my relationship with God, or a pivotal time in my relationship with God, because there's nothing like going through a deep pain like that, and it's like then you really realize God's love for you and how close he is.
But you feel it.
Did you feel that?
Like, it's not just crying to get through it, but it's a physical reaction to the pain.
Right.
And it can be scary. If you're not centered enough, whether it's in God or whatever makes you feel the most centered, that kind of pain can lead you down really dark roads.
Right.
And that can be really scary. I found it to be super helpful to confide in people that I knew I could trust. I had just started a new job. And I was working in 2 different shifts, and I found someone on each shift that I could confide in. One lady was she was just the warmest person I've ever met in my life. She told me she'd never met a stranger. So she had literally made friends with every single person she spoke with. But I told her what I was going through. So when there was moments where I just couldn't get through that hour and I needed to go and like I would go into the bathroom and it was just single-use bathroom. I would like lay down paper towels, like hand towels, and I would pray and I would cry or I'd do whatever I needed to do to like just get it out so that I could get back to work. So maybe it took like 10, 15 minutes, but I had a person I could trust that knew where I was at and knew that she could cover for me and I could also talk to that person. And when I switched shifts, God puts people in your life, even at your job, that you can trust and rely on and tell the deepest truth to. And I had someone else that I could do that to for that shift too. And it really made just getting through the workday easier because there's some times where it smacks you in the face and you just don't even realize that wave of pain is going to come and you do need to just work through it. And it's better to just... For me, it was better just to go get a cry out than it would have been to just try to hold it in and then not be productive the rest of the day or someone be wondering what's going on. And when someone looks at you and says, oh, what's going on when you're already sad, you just lose it in that moment anyways. So that was super helpful.
I just love how God will set people in your life at the perfect time, even if they're there just for the season to help you through that heartbreak or that time. I mean, it was clear that he would place people around you, but I think so often we have to kind of see that they're there. Like sometimes that is what's going to help us through those really hard times. And you're right. Like grief is 1 second you think you're fine. And then the next second you're not. And then the next second you're fine. And the next second you feel like it all just hit you in the face like a ton of bricks. Right. And so grief is just so hard when you're going through it. And you mentioned like how family can support you and friends, because I know people in my personal life right now that are going through divorce or breakup, and it's one thing when you're going through it, it's horrible. Yeah. But then when you see other people go through it too, it's like, the pain, especially if you've gone through it and you just don't know what to do. Yeah. So what would be your advice?
It was helpful for me when my mom asked me. I mean, thank God my parents lived so close to me at the time so they could just pop over, but I had to create a boundary there too. Yeah. Right?
Boundaries are good too.
I don't need you to just pop over, but please call me and just check on me. Or so we created a routine. I told her, when she would talk to me, she would say, "Are you looking for comfort right now? Or do you need to be heard? Do you want a solution?" And even though she didn't ask me that every single time, I had those repetitions in my brain. So I was able to say, when I called her, I'd say, "I just need you to listen to me for now." Or, "Can you just come over and hold me?" Or, "I'm hungry. Can you come feed me?" And she would bring dinner over or something. So being able to share with them. So if the roles are reversed, I know now where I would say, "Samantha, what can I do for you in this moment? Do you need something to eat? Do you want to just talk to me? Do you need a shoulder to cry on?" Yeah. And then let you tell me what I need. Humans are fixers. We try to solve problems, and not everybody wants their problem solved. They just want to hear, I just heard this, Brene Brown. I'm listening to one of her books right now. Sometimes you just want to hear, "This stinks. Right. I hate this with you right now. I hate that this is happening." Not, "Oh, it's going to get better," or "There's light on the other side," or "The grass is greener." Nobody wants to hear that when they're in the thick of it.
Right. That's so good. And it's so hard to not want to encourage someone or lecture sometimes or give advice. And it's like, most of the time, especially when people are going through really, really, really hard times, grief, we don't want advice. No. So I love that approach and those questions and just being there with someone. I think it means the most in those moments.
And I think doing things, physically doing things. I signed up for a bunch of I told you I did the marathon. I was not a runner. It took me over 5.5 hours to get through 26 miles. It was not fun at all. I will probably never do it again, but I'm super proud of myself for doing it. Yeah. But, I was able to take my parents' dogs running. So when I was practicing and training, then I had something to do. I signed up for a bunch of fun 5Ks like the Color Run, and I just roped all my friends into it with me. So just getting out and doing things or creating or whatever whatever your passion is, or maybe you find a new passion in that, just takes your mind off. You're not sitting idle, sad, watching terrible movies.
Yeah, and I think that is the beauty from the ashes that we don't often think about with like divorce or breakups, or like it's so hard and we can't see it at the time, but there is this like beautiful rebirth happening.
Oh yeah.
And I think that is so incredible. Like it's like almost a wake up call, like this is life and like we only have one life, so let's figure out like who I am. And so what do you think about that?
I love the person I became after. You know, I love to crack jokes. I love to make fun of hard things I went through once I've processed it. Maybe not in the moment, but once I process it. So I, crack divorce jokes all the time, or like but to me, it's because I became the person I wanted to be out of that. I take care of myself really well. Mind, body, spirit, all of it. And it's not perfect. I just do it so much better than what I did before because I have a higher importance on making sure I'm good so I can be good for everything else. I can't be a great daughter if my mind isn't right, because I'm not going to respond very well to my mom if there's something frustrating or stressful. Right. I'm married now. I owe it to my husband to make sure that I am in a good headspace. And when I'm not, I need to talk to him about it. I have a baby. If I'm not doing well physically or emotionally or spiritually, how am I going to set a good example for her? And that's like positive pressure that I can put on myself. Coming out of that, like I said, I became the person I wanted to become. I would deliberately learn things I wanted to learn, change the things I wanted to change about myself. I'll be honest, I struggled with dealing with anger. I did not handle it well. I wasn't taught how to handle it well.
Yeah.
And I had to relearn that. I found a pamphlet at church that brought me a whole bunch of stories from the Bible and a ton of verses, and it showed me what I could do or how anger was handled in different verses and through different stories, and it taught me a lot. And then from there, I delved into podcasts, lots of books, anything that I could, because that was the thing that I wanted to really improve about myself. I'm so much calmer now. It's so much easier for me to say, oh, how come you're thinking that way? Instead of, well, I didn't do it that way, or I didn't say it that way. So that was a big milestone for me. And that's something that I'm super proud of, because people can change, and you can change the things you want to change about yourself. You weren't just, this is the way I am, take me or leave me. Yeah. Those aren't the aspects that you say, take me or leave me. Your authenticity is what you say, take it or leave it. But you can be kind in how you speak to people. And even if you disagree or it's inappropriate what they said, or you don't like how you handled something, so it's easier for me to say, I didn't like how I said that, or I don't like how I handled that with you. And just removing pride and shame and setting those aside, and it's like, what are the facts here? And I love that I changed that about myself. It's made me a much better person and opened my eyes to accepting people for who they are and what they're doing and how they interact with me.
Yep. Yeah, it's so good, because if we can be good single people, or I shouldn't say good single people. If we can be single and really learn to love ourselves, know ourselves, how to process our emotions, I think that just sets us up for all the other relationships in our life.
Absolutely.
Our family, our future children, our spouses, coworkers.
Yeah.
Like, you're so right when you talked about like the anger thing. That is one big thing that I have learned over the years is, I think a lot of us didn't learn how to handle anger as kids, no. Especially our generation, like our parents' generation.
I mean, what
they
were our
weren't taught
parents
that.
taught about emotions at all?
And that was something that I've really had to work on, how to handle when I get like really upset, or even just going through the breakup I went through. Like, it was very hard handling my emotions through that. Mm-hmm. What's something that you learned to help you with anger?
I'm a big crier.
Yeah, yeah.
So sometimes, like, going to tears before going to a verbal reaction is safer.
Yeah.
And kinder.
Yeah.
The shortest verse in the Bible is Jesus wept, right? So we get to do that. And sometimes people don't handle you crying very well, whether it's out of anger or sadness, and it's because they don't know how to respond to you. And I don't like to generalize, but mostly men don't know how to handle women crying. It's just like a woman can handle a man crying, I think, at
it's
large
like, why
part.
are you crying?
But they don't know, because especially if it's out of something that you guys were talking about, they feel like they made you cry, and now they just are trying to do everything they can to like get out of that situation. And whether they handle it by like avoidance or more anger or whatever it is, they just don't know how to process that. So at first for me, I was like, well, if I cry first, I can just get a lot of this upfront emotion out, and then again set the emotion aside, it's done, and deal with the fact of the matter, like what is actually happening right now. And then you can move forward. And then it's, it got to a point where it was like, okay, well, maybe I'm crying a little bit too much because we can't even have a productive conversation. My dad just like doesn't like to see me cry. It breaks his heart. Yeah. He doesn't know how to handle it. So he just is kind of like exit stage left as quickly as possible, and bless his heart, like we're getting there and like learning. But now I can realize, okay, if I can get the cry out, whatever I need to do, reel it in, and then speak to what I'm feeling, it's a lot easier to have a productive conversation. And I mean, that's like, I think anger is maybe like one of the most difficult emotions to handle, because so much negativity can come out of it. When you're sad, yes, like some negative things can come out of that, or you can go down a road, but it's really easier to comfort someone who's sad than it is to comfort someone who's enraged. Right. That like, I'll touch on this probably in a few minutes when we get to that anyway, but when you start dating, I didn't really start dating until like my late 20s, early 30s at that point. But a big question I asked when I thought I was getting serious with someone was, how do you handle
anger?
Well, how do you handle like your emotions? Or how do you handle disagreements? Or if, you had those interview questions, or like, tell me about a time where you had a difficult situation with a coworker. It's like, tell me about a time where you had a difficult situation with the significant other. Right. How did you handle that?
Wow, that's funny.
But those are intense questions, and people are like,
those are good questions once you like start seriously dating someone. Yes, because and you will learn
like
quickly. You'll learn quickly how they handle their emotions. Yeah. And one thing, oh my gosh, this is a side note with emotions. Lately, I have been checking. I never really thought we could go a whole episode on how women's emotions are at different times of the month. Sure, Amanda and I talk about this at lunch all the time. Constantly. But randomly, if I am all in my feelings, if I am like more angry about things, I'll just look at my period app. I use Avia, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's a week before my period. This is why I'm being crazy.
Oh, absolutely. You get to the point where, and if you can be in tune enough, even if you're not a woman, or even if you don't have your period, or you don't experience your cycle anymore, if you can stop and say, did I get enough rest today? How much water have I had today? Did I eat? Have I moved my body? Like, all of those things play into how intense your emotions are. Yeah. So if you can go down that checklist and figure out if something's missing, then maybe what you're experiencing emotionally wouldn't be as intense as it is if you're at par.
Yeah, that's so good and so true. And
then you look at your period track and you're like, oh.
Right, and then, yes, I did everything I needed to do, but it's a week before my period, and that is why
I have no control over this.
But it does help me be like, oh, this is why I am just an emotional basket case this week. But back to like everything. So going through that whole experience, your divorce and, going through that hard time, like looking back, what is like the biggest takeaway that you like learned through all that?
There's probably,
and I know it's that's a really hard question.
There's a lot that I took away from it, but
yeah,
I would say God's not going to let you fail. Like, it'll be hard. It's not going to be easy. Like, you're going to go through some rough things. But you will come out on the other side. I think to put a cap on that, just because you went through one hard thing doesn't mean that nothing else is going to happen to you.
Right.
That was really hard, but like hard things keep happening to me in life, and I think I got through that. And there's stuff that still pops up and things like that, but I thought like, okay, I survived this. And then I had like another tough situation a couple of years later, and somebody looked at me and said, did you think that because you went through a divorce and everything's okay that you were never going to have to go through anything tough again? And I was like, I guess I didn't really think that through. But it prepares you for the other hard things. Yeah. And at different points in your life, things feel different. Being in love at 22 feels a lot different than being in love at 36. Right. Or 37, however old I am now.
You do not look it.
But it's just different. So the feelings you experience, whether it's love or sadness or anxiety, they all feel different at different stages of your life because you've gone through something different. So yes, hard things are going to keep happening, but you're going to be okay.
Yeah, I love that. And it's so true. And it just takes time. And also, I think when you go through those really hard times, it makes you realize how strong you are, I guess.
Absolutely.
It's like, okay, I made it through that. Now I can make it through anything.
For sure.
Like, I've seen the darkest pit, so I can literally make it through anything now.
Yeah. Absolutely. It really shows you what you're capable of.
Yeah.
And then just knowing that you can be good on your own makes you feel that much more confident going into another relationship.
So let's transition into when you started dating and everything. So you said you were in your late 20s, early 30s when you started dating. And then tell us, we want to know how you met your now husband, Cam, who's the sweetest guy. But tell us that story.
I spent time making friends and finding myself. So when I was ready to start dating, I just started getting on some dating apps. Which
what apps were you on?
The first app was Christian Mingle.
How was that?
We went on one date and I canceled that subscription.
Yeah, I've not tried that one.
Honestly, I got a lot of flack for being honest about being divorced on app.
Christian Mingle.
Yeah. It was.
Oh my gosh!
It was.
Wow.
People were unnecessarily forward about their feelings about it. Like, you can just not talk to people. Like, it's okay. Like, I tell my daughter, if you don't want that food, you don't have to throw it on the floor. You can just leave it on the table.
Right.
Somehow grown adults still like to just lob their opinions at you unsolicited. So got off Christian Mingle, tried Match.com for a while, and that's when Snapchat was really big. So I used to actually just read the wacky messages that people would send me with like funny filters on Snapchat to my friends, because it was just absolutely bizarre. I didn't go on any dates with anybody from Match. And then I took a break for a while, just dove into work for a little bit, and then I got on Bumble. because it seemed a little more friendly. And as the female, I could make the call on, you have to message the man first. Yeah. So
I thought I wouldn't like that, but I kind of do like that, how you can message first.
Yeah, I mean, I was a little shy about it because I was just like, people should come to me, but that wasn't working. So I was okay with like being able to choose who I opened the door for.
Right.
Again, like people will just give you like their opinions about things or share things or tell you that you lied about what you looked like in your pictures, even though they've never seen you in person and all your pictures are a variety of photos. But it's just, internet dating is wild.
Yes, it is.
However, ended up coming across a very handsome gentleman named Cameron, and I swiped right on him and messaged him. But he looked familiar to me because he happened to work where I worked. And I've seen him before, and I know people who know him. And something had just always been in the back of my mind where the person I was going to meet that I was going to fall in love with, like real love, I was already going to know them in some capacity. Mm-hmm. I had never come in contact with him before, though. I just knew people who knew him. So we swiped and matched, and then we found ourselves at like the same spin classes from time to time, and maybe like a yoga class here and there.
And was that before you went on a date? Like you matched and then you would see him out?
It was like we've seen each other out, we matched, and then once we matched, we tried to meet right away. So like we met at a coffee shop so I can make sure he wasn't like a lunatic in person. And it was just like a quick grab a cup of coffee, and then we each went back to work after that. And then our first date, I invited him over to the house and made him dinner, and it was not the dinner I'm most proud of by any stretch of the imagination. But
what was it?
Well, he had a bunch of dietary restrictions because he was prepping for a surgery, so he actually had to have a kidney replaced or a kidney transplant. So he was prepping for that, and his diet was super restricted. So I was really into zucchini noodles. Everybody had a zoodler at that time, so did that.
Yes.
I made a cream sauce out of red peppers and no cream because he couldn't have dairy, couldn't have salt, no sugar. I grilled chicken, but all I could use was herbs seasonings. It was just. We didn't end up eating it. I think we reheated it 4 or 5 times because we were just sitting at the kitchen table
That's
talking
funny.
and getting to know each other. So no. Probably not the dinner that I would ever make again, but it was worth it to have that experience. We laugh about it all the time now. But second date, pretty quickly, we got into some pretty serious questions. I did ask him how he handles conflict and emotions, and if he wanted to have kids, and if he believes in God, and what his family was like. We asked.
The hard stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I was at a point where I was I don't really want to waste my time.
Right.
I've been on a few. I was on a few dates, went on a few pretty bad dates, and probably my only regret is that I didn't try to go on some more bad dates because I think it's good material to share with my family. It just would have been nice to have.
We're the entertainment. The single people are the entertainment in the family.
Well, you have you just have some people do and say wild things.
They do. They do. We have the stories.
Yeah,
for sure.
But we'll save that for another time.
Right.
But, we got to know each other pretty intensely, pretty quickly. And I mean, I don't like to say the rest is history, but we got close very quickly. We shared a lot of the same values. And we just tried to build the relationship strong from the get-go because we really felt like this is the person I'm going to spend the rest of my life with. And that's scary. Really, you go from being in a marriage to being single and dating here and there and maybe going on a couple dates, but nothing serious to the first person you get serious with is the one. Right. It's society and movies and everything tells you that's not the case. You got to go through a few. But that wasn't. It's not everybody's story is different, and this was ours.
So how old were you then when you started dating him?
I was 30.
Okay, so 6 years had passed since the divorce at 24. Mm-hmm. Wow, and he was the first serious relationship. But you're right. Why waste our time if we're not going to be serious.
Yeah.
So were you nervous after all that you've gone through? Like, were you nervous to fall in love again and to get hurt again? Like, did you think about that with the divorce? Was that something you had to overcome, or?
No. I think I was just 2 feet.
Yeah.
Head over heels, like just dove. But I also felt like I was doing it with a solid frame of mind too. Yeah. I understand the honeymoon phase, and that can last a couple of years where you're just like, everything they do is wonderful.
Right.
But we had some really hard conversations.
You trusted him.
And having those difficult conversations and seeing how that person handles it and how they respond to you is pivotal. So we got to see how each other would respond. And there was some stuff that came up. Like, you know, we have a difficult conversation and all of a sudden I'm up in arms sad because I'm like, oh my gosh, he's going to leave. And there was a couple times where he was like, we can disagree and we can go through this and we can work through this. I'm not going to walk out the door. But that's what I experienced because with my ex, we didn't have a lot of disagreements and work through it kind of conversations. It was like all of a sudden one day, like he just had enough of whatever he had enough of and left and was distant and nothing came back from it. We didn't work through anything. Again, like there wasn't closure from that relationship, but just like in my heart.
Yeah.
So that was interesting to see how that like past trauma
can resurface.
Itself. Yeah. But we just had to work through it.
Yeah.
And he reassured me and made sure that I knew where he stood and he knew where I stood and just move forward.
And it's something that I talk a lot about on the show is like dealing with the things from our past now. But like we're never going to be able to deal with everything or heal everything like while we're single. Right. And things are always going to come up in relationships and you're never going to be perfect by the time you get into relationship, marriage. Like that's a continued process. And I think relationships, people talk about them like mirrors, you don't really even know the things that you're going to have to overcome once you get into a marriage or relationship or whatever. 'Cause it'll just come up when you are face to face with someone you love and like working through different things.
Because you don't know how you're going to feel when there's a stressful moment. Right. You can guard against and practice and try to remember as much as possible about how to handle those things. But that kind of stuff sneaks up. We protect ourselves by putting it in the back of our mind and not thinking about it all the time. Like that's just that's a defense mechanism. That's how you survive. That's how you get through. That's how you keep moving forward day to day. So when you have those times that it's more difficult, it can be really sneaky. And we're all learning too that our brains don't always tell us the truth about things. So not everything we think is factual. Not everything we feel is reality. Your feelings are valid in that moment, but what brought you to that feeling could be just a slight misunderstanding.
Right.
Or you're missing context around something because little facts can change the way you look at things completely.
Right. Yeah, that's so good. And it could be us projecting something that happened in our past too onto a situation that, so you're right. It could be a bunch of different things. And, now you have beautiful baby Maxine. She's so cute, their baby. And I love just seeing you with Maxine. And I feel like I'm going to tear up talking about it because I just remember like a couple years ago us having a conversation about aging and, desiring kids and the anxiety that kind of comes with that, especially for women, because we have this timeline, this biological clock that's ticking. And I just remember you talking to me about that a few years ago, and now you have this beautiful baby who you love so much, and you're such a good mom. So can you talk a little bit about that and like that journey?
Absolutely. So there was that gap, right, between not being with somebody and then not knowing if I would ever be with someone.
Yeah.
I prayed all the time that the right person would just fall into my lap.
Yeah.
Come and get me. But I think I know that I needed to accept the fact that I don't truly know God's will. Only He does. Mm-hmm. I can just pray that whatever His desires are, that mine align with His, so that I can prepare for what may or may not be. I may want to desperately be a mom and a wife and be in a relationship, but either I'm not ready, or the person I'm supposed to be with isn't ready yet, or maybe that's just not my story. So I really started to come to terms with the fact that maybe I won't have kids. Maybe that's just not in the cards for me. Maybe there's something else out there. So I just continued to do what I could to take care of myself, mind, body, spirit again. And then in my career, maybe my career was going to be what my truest passion was. So I really started to settle into that and accept it. And then God took me on this roller coaster, introduced me to Cameron, and we had amazing 6 years together. And then Maxine came along, and that was just the biggest blessing I could have asked for, to have the person that I'm spending my life with and who I'm partnering with to get through the rest of my life, and that be the person that's also who I get to raise my child with.
Yeah, like, how fun.
She's perfectly both of us in the best and the quirkiest ways, even as young as she is, but it's not something that I thought was going to be possible at some point. So to see that turn around so quickly is incredible.
It really is. And you're so right. I started praying that like a few years ago, just really trying to align myself with God's will. And sometimes it hurts and sometimes it's hard, but no matter what His will is for our lives, like His will is always better. Like we can have a fulfilled life without kids or without these things that we desire so deeply. Like you can have a fulfilled and fun and great life. So when we start to really say like, okay, my life could end up in all these different ways, and like I'm good and God is good and I'm highly favored, and like that's exactly what you did. And then He ended up, giving you this beautiful family and everything. But at the core, that no matter what, like God has the best intentions for you, and you can be happy, in all these different scenarios. So I just think that's so beautiful.
It's a lot of little miracles. When I first realized that I was falling in love with Cameron, I was so scared. He had just told me that his kidneys were failing and that he wasn't sure what the future looked like for him. It would still be a year before he would have a successful transplant. And then it wasn't easy after that. It wasn't just like, oh, everything's perfect after this. There's complications. There's other things. We're aging in our mid-30s, so different things are happening. And, he didn't know what God had in store for his life either. Our relationship and Maxine is truly a set of wild miracles that we would have never have expected could have come to fruition. And like even our families, it's just incredible the way that all of those things come together. And I could have never seen that. When my ex left, I could have never seen this life for myself. Like it was just not. So I was devastated. My whole life fell apart. That was my life.
You feel like it's over in that moment.
How am I going to love anyone else ever again? And
how am I ever going to have a family? How am I ever going to have these things that I desire?
We talked about, like, I journaled all the time. And I still have a lot of those journals. And they'd probably make for a very tearful book. But I found a while back a whole list of things that I felt I needed to ensure my spouse that I was going to spend my life with had. And I ended up finding it a couple years after Cam and I had been dating, and I was stunned.
How close it was?
Every box was checked.
Wow.
And it was not a short list. It was a long list. It was broad. It wasn't like need to be this tall or like have this color eyes. But it was integrity based. You know, like it was, what are this person's values going to be? And again, like you just make these lists never thinking that they're going to get checked off.
Right.
But there's a way.
I love it. That's amazing. And so you go through this whole like whirlwind of falling in love and then dating, and then now you have this baby. So like, how has that transition been for you? Going from going through that hard divorce, going single life, dating, marriage, baby, like how has that all been?
Parenthood is harder than the divorce.
Is it?
In a different way. Right. It's not heartbreaking.
You're
but
not
like,
getting a
also
lot of sleep.
She's not like the tiny baby that she was anymore. And she's growing up so fast. And it's like, it's amazing and like bittersweet at the same time. But now I have a little bit of a taste of why my parents' hearts broke so hard when I was going through my divorce. And it's just a little bit, because at some point Maxine's going to go through heartbreak and it's just going to crush me. So I think bittersweet is probably the best way, but it's spectacular and it's scary and you get to form who this person is.
Right.
And as a couple, you're trying to figure out like, how do we both ensure that like we're doing the right things and she's going to become the person that she needs to be, not necessarily the person we want her to be. Like that's sort of the evolution of the generations, right? Does that answer your question?
Yes. And
I forgot it.
Because I can't imagine, like what you just said is so true, because again, like I was saying earlier, when you see your loved ones going through something hard, it is like a piercing to your, or a stabbing right through your soul, because you just want to take the pain away. I can't imagine that with a child. Like you love your child more than anything in the world. And I think it's just a great reminder too that, like you said, you're constantly thinking about, I want to give my child like this good upbringing. I want them to be a good person. It's so important who we choose to be with. And it's worth waiting on the right person. Absolutely. Like you waited 6 years after your divorce, and it's different for everyone. You could go through a breakup and find someone, you know, in the next 6 months or something. But like making sure that you're waiting for that person, not expecting perfection, but the integrity. Like you said, you wrote a list of things that you wanted in a man based on like integrity and kindness. And I can tell like the things that you tell me that Cam does, he looks out for you even as a mom. Yeah. And I don't know why I'm tearing. Because
it's a happy thing, and it's so beautiful.
He cares about you and your well-being.
You know, one of the things I put on my list is that I would be treated like a queen, and that seems so outlandish at the time. Like, how dare I? But how dare we not? Right. How dare we not demand that? Because if I'm going to treat my man like a king, and I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that he understands,
you're about to be treated good.
Why wouldn't I demand the same thing of myself back? So to your point, like everyone's timeline can be completely different. The quicker I found myself and the quicker I understood my value and what I deserved, the easier it was going to be to know when my person came around. Because Maya Angelou says, when people show you who they are, believe them. Sometimes it's a good thing. Sometimes they show you that they're really good people, and you can believe it. It's not always a show. It's not always a facade. You're in person. You're seeing each other one-on-one. This isn't just social media or like online dating, right? You basically are looking at the finest version of their Instagram page. But that's not who they really are. Mine wasn't, I tried, but it wasn't exactly, I don't know how people are going to perceive that until we're in person and I can see you reacting to me and I can see how you're responding. I needed to trust and believe that Cameron was the person that he was showing me he was, and he absolutely is. Yes. And that's so special. That's not something that I didn't find that in 5 different people that I went on dates with on dating.
Right.
Like they very quickly showed me who they were when they told me to order the salad instead of the omelet, and both are perfectly healthy. Or when they told me that you shouldn't wear yoga pants because you can't tell if you're gaining weight or not.
Oh my gosh, these guys have some nerve out
People
here.
are wild.
No, yes.
So, yes, when he's saying, please order everything, eat whatever you want. Or, yes, I'd love to do that 5K stair climb with you. That's probably going to have me wheezing at the end, but I'm on board, babe. Let's do it. And those are the things that just reinstill that they're doing things that they don't want or don't necessarily love to do, but they do it for you. Because we make sacrifices all the time. You make sacrifices for the people you care about. Yeah. And they should for you too.
Yes. Well, I'm just so happy for you.
Thank you.
And I just love your story, and God just redeems everything. Like if you're going through something where you're like, I have no idea how I could ever see myself falling in love again, how I could ever get through this, what I'm going through now, or maybe you are at the point where you're like, I just don't ever feel like I'll ever be with anyone ever again. Like God literally can change everything in a minute, and we also need to participate in that and not give up. And like you said, like work on ourselves, keep ourselves busy, keep busy with work, keep, getting involved and running a marathon, like doing those fun things, like getting out, and don't give up. Yeah. Do not give up. Like make sure you're getting up, going out, meeting different people, going out with friends, being around your loved ones, like being open to the people that God puts in your life and taking their help, accepting it. Mm-hmm. This is such a good this is how all our walks are. We walk together at work, and this is literally
what we talk about.
So before we end, I guess, like, is there anything else that you want to make sure you say, or any piece of advice, or just anything you want to leave us with?
I think the biggest thing, just same as my takeaway, like trust that God has something more amazing in store for you than you can even fathom. Cameron and I talk about this when we walk. You and I talk about this when we walk. I could have never seen what, or even understood what to feel God would have coming up. And it might be a long time, but even in this moment right now, we may not truly understand what a blessing this is, because in 5 years we're going to look back and say, remember when we did that podcast and talked about our stories and shared the vulnerability in our stories? Like, there's healing in this for me. I pray that this helps somebody in some way, shape, or form, or just gives somebody some hope. But understanding that God's not going to let you fail.
Right.
There's things that are not going to come to fruition that we want to, but that's all for a reason. Mm-hmm. And we just won't know what that reason is until after it's passed, unfortunately. But then you get to look back and be so glad and so grateful.
Amen. Well, thank you so much.
Thanks for having
me.
Me.
I love you.
And
I'm
too.
So thankful for you.
Thank you. I appreciate this so much.
Yes, I love this conversation. I don't want to stop talking, but we're already up on almost an hour. But it was wonderful. And Amanda will be back in a future episode. She'll be back, and more in the future, I believe. So
I'm always happy to be a guest, as long as Ginny's here.
sorry about Ginny. She was crazy during this episode.
We're not
trying to calm her down
in 2024.
Amanda's the girl at work too that makes sure all the women stop apologizing. We're walking around like, I'm sorry, and she's like, stop apologizing. I'm like, oh crap.
Aggressively
sorry
supportive.
for apologizing.
I'm sorry. Yes, we're not apologizing for things that don't need apologies in 2024.
That's the takeaway, the main goal takeaway. I really need to get better at that, actually, though.
We all do. I do the same thing.
All right, fam. We will see you next time. Bye, guys.
See ya.